This morning, I want to talk to you a little bit about celebration, dedication, celebration, and jubilation. I've got a confession to make to you guys. This is it's not a very good part about my personality that I enjoy, but I'm just going to confess to you guys here up front. Do you guys watch like just the end of football games on Saturdays? And yesterday was like, if you're into college football, there's a lot of upsets. All these, number 2, number 3, number 4 teams all going down. If you're not a football fan, just bear with me just for a minute. But at the end of those games, the cameraman flashes in on the fans, like the student section of the losing side, and like he just like caps in, and he always finds like the kid who's got the most emotion, like it's someone crying or something after the game. I love watching that. I don't know what it is about watching somebody cry over a football game, but there's something about that I just enjoy. It's part of my sin, I know, sinful nature. But it's like every single time they manage to find the best faces. So you just Google it. Just Google like sad fans. And like you'll have all these like fans pop up. And like, because after a football game, you've got two sides, right? You've got the winning side and the losing side. And the winning side, they're like cheering up and down. Iowa beat Michigan yesterday at their home, and all these people are going across on the stadium, and they're all like cheering and hooping and hollering, and it's going crazy. And then all the Michigan fans that are there who made the trip to the game, they're like all sitting there like, oh man, are we going to get the national championship? And it's all sad. So you got both sides of that. There's a lot of things we celebrate in life. A lot of things that we go, yeah, this is really amazing, and other times we get really sad about. It's just kind of a fact of life, a part of just the human experience of things that we do. There's so many things like that. New babies born, right? And what do, man? We're sending pictures, they're putting it on Facebook. I'm sending it to all my family members. I mean, everybody's going to know who my baby is and what they look like from every angle, right? You got this shot of the head, this shot. Let's get a nose shot, right? I'm going to get everything in there because I'm so excited because I'm a dad and this is my baby, right? We celebrate so many cool things. And we're good at celebrating. We're very good at celebrating. We celebrate even over dumb things, right? A lot of dumb things that we celebrate over. And that's just, again, human nature. I think I showed this a couple of sermons ago, but when Bluebell, and we don't even get Bluebell up here, but when I heard they were shutting down, like me and Lindsay had a couple days of mourning, like we wore sackcloth and ashes, for a few days, and it's like, man, Bluebell is like the best ice cream. And we celebrate over these things like that are just kind of really trivial, but yet just kind of make things fun in life. But this one area I'm talking about today is celebrating righteously over things that matter, over the fact of who God is, over the fact that He's saved us from our sin. Celebrating over things like that matter for us sometimes can be a really awkward thing. Why is that? Why is it that celebration in that sense is weird? I think, it's kind of a rhetorical question. I think there's some answers there. I think sometimes we see extremes, especially in Christian life. Like, I don't know what your guys' background is. My mom grew up more from what you would say as a more charismatic background. And so in that church, people would dance. They were running down the aisles. People were going crazy, all the time. And then you've got like those from the other extreme. And it's kind of church I grew up in. There was maybe clapping. If it was like a bluegrass kind of song, people were kind of clapping. But apart from that, like you just kind of sat back and you were stoic. You just kind of kept still. Like hands better be at your side. If you move them up here, you're going to get kicked out of the church for being too charismatic. You keep them at your side. In your pockets if you're getting a little antsy, just to be safe. And so that's what you did. And I said, but if you really think about it, right, all the things that we celebrate over, we get excited about, why don't we get as excited over the things of God, of who He is and what He's done for us? My son this morning, it's his 3-year-old birthday. And we put balloons out on the table and just had like a special morning. We made like cinnamon rolls. Lindsay made like fresh cinnamon rolls for him. And he gets up like, Trey, it's your birthday. Happy birthday, buddy. And he comes running up. He's got a big old smile on his face, running in. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. And then like this morning, even like I'm doing this with him. And I come up before he does, my wife does. And he comes up later and I'm standing outside. He said, Daddy, it's my birthday. And I was like, I know, buddy. I was right there with you. And he's just so excited. And I think, why don't we get excited over the things of God? But celebration has an appropriate context in the Christian life. Like, there is a right way to celebrate, and that is good and righteous and holy. And if God has made us this way, right, he's made us creatures of joy. Like, we experience joy. Joy should be experienced, just done in the right way, in the right context. That's a good thing, and that's not something we should shy away from. So if you're a little nervous this morning, saying if we're going to institute dancing in the aisles during worship, I'm not saying we're going to be doing anything like that. I'm just saying to be excited. What does this mean to be excited about the things of God? And so we're going to look in Nehemiah chapter 12, starting in verse 27. Let's look in verse 27. And at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought the Levites in all their places to bring them to Jerusalem to celebrate the dedication with gladness, with thanksgiving, and with singing, with cymbals, harps, and lyres. And the songs of the singers gathered together from the districts surrounding Jerusalem and from the villages of the Netophathites. Also from Beth Gilgal and from the region of Geba and Asmaveth, for the singers had built for themselves villages around Jerusalem. And the priests and the Levites purified themselves, and they purified the people in the gates of the wall. If you've been following up context up to this point, what's going on in Nehemiah is the Israelites were in Persia. You had a remnant left over in Jerusalem, but the king of Persia, Artaxerxes, says, yes, I want you to go back and rebuild the walls around Jerusalem. He commissions them. He gives them money and his resources to build a defensive structure around a conquered people. I mean, it's just absolutely unheard of thing, and just to see God's hand and sovereignty and control over the people all throughout. Of course, all kinds of things happen. There's people who oppose them. They want to kill them. There's also like even internal strife between the people as they're trying to do this. They're working on being unselfish, to the people that are there, and be generous and actually partake in the law and do the things that they're supposed to be doing. And now we're getting towards the end of the book. We've got like one more sermon left. Next chapter is 13, and we're finishing up Nehemiah, and we're moving on to a series and doing a Christmas thing. But as we end, we're talking about this idea of celebration, and this is a cool time for them, for the people, that they get to celebrate, to see what God has done. And if we've taken this kind of really broad brush look at what's going on here in Nehemiah, you get to see everything that's happened, right? It's their whole history of all that God has done throughout their history. And I think as we see that, you can very easily see God's hand from a story. You ever read a book and you read the book from beginning to end, or maybe it's a history and you see it and you're going throughout and you kind of look at the people there in the story and you almost want to like talk to them. Like, how come you guys don't get what's going on here? Or like a character, like, are they really that oblivious? Are they really that blind to see what's going on? How come they can't see what's happening here in the story? And I think as we read the Bible in the Old Testament, again, you see this with the Israelites over and over again. You go, how come you guys aren't getting it? This is so easy to understand. Are you thick? What's going on? But we're the same way. In our histories of our lives, we have memories like goldfish. It's like we forget 5 seconds later after something happened to us how great, how awesome something was for us. And we forget. And we're immediately in this moment of despair and sadness. And, oh man, my life is terrible. It's ruined. And it's over with. And I'm saying that because I'm right there with you. There's something about human beings that cause us to forget all that has happened in our history. And how many great things have happened in your life that just over and over and over again, but as soon as that one bad thing happens, everything goes out the window. My life is terrible. It's bad. And you go and you start, maybe you cry, maybe you vent to your friends and tell everybody how bad life is. And it continues to go on. I see it again in my kids, bringing my kids so much because I see my own nature in my kids. It's so obvious when I watch them through that. For example, the other day, I think it was yesterday, my kids, they're getting to get to do something really cool. So I'm taking them to Dunkin' Donuts, getting a donut. It's kind of our tradition before the South Carolina game. We get some donuts and go in there, and my kids want to get some more candy or something else. I'm like, you're getting a donut. Or it was on the radio. It was on the other thing too. They want to listen to like this certain song on the radio, and it's a CD that they've listened to over and over and over again. And honestly, I was tired of hearing it. So I was like, okay, we're going to take a break from this CD, and we're just going to turn it on to K-Love, okay? We're just going to put it here. We want to listen to this CD. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that right now. We're going to take a break. And they're like, oh, like they're all looking all sad and depressed and sad. And I'm like, you guys are getting a donut right now. Like Dunkin' Donuts has a candy cane donut that's full of cream. Like it's probably the worst thing you could possibly be getting, but you get to get this right now. You should be very excited. But instead, they were sad. And I was thinking like, this is just who I am, right? This is just human nature. This is what we do. We forget all the great things God has done and what he's given us along the way. Even just thinking about very simply, the last song we sang, the breath in our lungs, like the fact that we are breathing every day and God has given us the breath to breathe, to live, to act, to function, to dream, to hope, to plan. And even if you think about where we're at, we live in a place where, you can get a job somewhere. And even not, there's things that can help you along the way. In many countries of the world, they don't have that. Remember, we were in the Philippines, and we were in this poor, poor village, and we're walking through, and these little girls were selling seaweed to try to make something for what would be the equivalent of pennies. And that's what they were trying to do, just to get something, because they had absolutely nothing. Their house was made of bamboo, and it was just this one little room over top of a river where they used the bathroom in. They washed their clothes in. They took baths in. All right there in that little river. They had absolutely nothing. And I remember leaving that trip, coming back. And of course, you forget 5 seconds later. But I remember that was one of the lasting impressions from that trip. I was thinking like, how much do I have that I complain about all the time? I never have enough. It's like just human nature. We just forget. And so we see here in the Israelites, they had this service of dedication, dedicating the wall of Jerusalem. And they sought the Levites. So these are the people who worked in the temple. They're bringing out all the instruments, right? They've got the cymbals. They've got the drums out, and they're bringing out everything. They're ready to go. They got the harps. So you got stringed instruments. So very similar to what we do on a Sunday, maybe not quite the same instruments exactly, but you got stringed instruments, you've got percussion, you've got things that are going on up there. They've got singers, and they've got this service of dedication, dedicating the wall. And we think about this word dedication, of what this means, of corporate dedication. Dedication is something we do, or at least throughout history, in order to say that something is a sacred moment or time. Now, in the wall, was that wall something more than just whatever they built it out of, stone and mortar? No, it was just regular stone and mortar. Nothing special about it. There's nothing holy about those things. But they took that service to dedicate what was going on because they wanted to remember the commitment they were making as a body to the Lord, to remember what God had done in their life. This is a dedication of commitment. We're committed to you because you have been committed to us, and we want to keep the covenant that you have put before us. We want to follow in your law. We want to do what glorifies your name as you have continued to bless us and keep your law and keep your end of the covenant and protect us and take care of us. And so this for them was a time for them to remember that, their commitment to the covenant. And they did that with celebration. They brought out all the music. They sang. They worshiped God, and in the middle of that, remembering so they would not forget what their commitment was to the Lord. I think as we understand commitment and times of dedication, sometimes we take things a little bit too informally, and we want to say it's almost where it's haphazard, like if I get to do this, then good. If not, if I don't get the time to do it, then oh well, it's not that big of a deal. My brother got married last weekend. We were in Birmingham last week, Alabama. And I was just thinking a lot about weddings, and just over my short ministry, it seemed like there's been several weddings I've been able to be a part of and officiate. And it just has made me think a lot about it in marriage and what it means. And marriage is a really good example of this too. But in this, a lot of people go to a wedding And you look at the wedding and okay, this is just a one-day thing, right? Tons of money is spent into it. But I think the point of it, again, it doesn't always communicate this because people turn anything good into something bad. But the point of a wedding is you invite all your friends and family. Typically, you'd invite your church to be a part of that, your wedding, a church that you're a part of. Now, of course, today people are traveling all over the place. You can't really do that as much, but that's the idea, that your church should be a part of it because they're witnessing something. They're witnessing two people pledge their vows to one another, that they're going to be with each other in sickness and in health as long as they both shall live. Right, these are not just words that people are just spitting, that should be spitting out. They're saying these in front of witnesses to hold them accountable to that. Because they are saying in that they don't ever want to break that. They're making a vow with God, they shouldn't break that. And so the people in front of them are witnessing so that they can make sure if things do get rocky and they start thinking, do we need to break this off? These people in front of them are going to try to help come around them, help this thing stay together. As a body, corporately committing to follow this commitment to the Lord. It's the point of these dedications. We've done baby dedications, and for us, those are not, they don't mean anything. I mean, they don't impart any kind of spiritual grace to any baby. They don't impart any kind of spiritual grace to us as parents. They are a time for us as a body to say, these children which we have, we want them to be raised up to be followers of Jesus Christ, and we want to point them to Jesus in everything that we say and do. So as parents, we're committing our lives to steward our kids to follow after Jesus. And this church that's coming around them is to also see these children and also to love them and to point them to Jesus. There are times for us to remember big milestones and commit in celebration to what God is doing. It's a celebration through corporate dedication. It's good for us to do that. It's good for us to have times where we do that as a body. And specifically, what does that look like for us? Application-wise, I mean, I think sometimes we'll have, who knows, maybe at one point as a church plant, if we get to the point down the road where we don't have to depend upon outside resources to sustain what we have going on here, that'd be a time to celebrate. That'd be really cool. We have other church plants that we want to start and get going in different places. I mean, those are things that we can celebrate. When people come to faith in Christ, when people celebrate in baptism of a symbol of what Jesus has done, that's a time to celebrate. It's a time to be thankful for God, for his salvation in somebody's life. And that is good and right and holy to do. And so there are times in our lives when we do that. But to remember that it's a commitment. It's a celebration through commitment and dedication. Secondly, there's a celebrating through corporate thankfulness. Let's look down into verse 31. Then I brought the leaders of Judah up onto the wall and appointed 2 great choirs that gave thanks. One went to the south on the wall to the dung gate, and after them went Hoshea and half the leaders of Judah, and Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, and Jeremiah, and certain of the priests' sons with trumpets. Zechariah, the son of Jonathan, son of Shemaiah, son of Mattaniah, son of Micaiah, son of Zachar, son of Asaph, and his relatives Shemaiah, Azarel, Milalai, Gilalai, Mai, Nethanel, Judah, and Hanani, with the musical instruments of David the man of God, and Ezra the scribe went before them. At the fountain gate, they went up straight before them by the stairs of the city of David at the ascent of the wall above the house of David to the water gate on the east. Then the other choir of those who gave thanks went to the north, and I followed them with half of the people on the wall above the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, and above the gate of Ephraim, and by the gate of Yeshana, and by the fish gate, and the tower of Hananel, and the tower of the 100 to the sheep gate, and they came to a halt at the gate of the guard. So both choirs of those who gave thanks stood in the house of God, and I and half of the officials with me, and the priest Eliakim, Messiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, Elionai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with trumpets, and Messiah, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Jehonan, Malchijah, Elam, and Ezer. And the singers sang with Jezariah as their leader. And they offered great sacrifices that day and rejoiced, for God had made them rejoice with great joy. The women and children also rejoiced, and the joy of Jerusalem was heard far away. So as they continued this service, they had like two choirs, and of course you think about, just picture the city. You got a city, and walls are all around the city. And they have gates at different openings to the wall, so you can go into the city. And these are not like a little tiny little wall, like it's super thin. I mean, they're really wide. And if you think of like just think to ancient times, or even maybe movies you've seen where you've got people up who can actually be on a wall and look down, at what's going on around. You can have guys up there who are, if you think in a war understanding, archers or that kind of thing for defense purposes. So these are wide. In fact, I think in the Jericho, the walls around Jericho, these are so wide they would have like chariot races on them and stuff. I mean, these are wide walls. So you have up on these walls, you're bringing up these choirs of people, singers, of the Levites, and they're going up on either side of the wall, so all around Jerusalem. And then people are singing and celebrating God, and you've got just this almost like a stadium kind of effect. I mean, think of like a football stadium. And then in that, people are just kind of singing, they're praising God. I heard this about a LSU stadium before. Like, it was so loud at one time, they actually caused an earthquake that registered didn't cause the earthquake, but it registered on the Richter scale because of how loud it was in the stadium. I mean, just think like that kind of thing where people are just yelling and singing and going crazy. And they're singing because of the praise to God. So much so that it says down in the bottom of this, that the women and children also rejoiced, and the joy of Jerusalem was heard far away. So it wasn't just the men, it was men, women, children, everybody. I mean, all the people are singing, so much so, or if you're away from Jerusalem, people are hearing noise coming from Jerusalem going, what in the world is going on in Jerusalem? That's how excited and how loud and how loud the volume was there. And this idea of celebrating in thankfulness, the people were so thankful for what God had done that they're expressing that in joy. Again, I think it's very easy for us to come in on Sunday mornings, and this is possible for us to do all the time, but we often come in with different things on our mind. Sunday morning, especially if you have kids, getting kids out of the house can be a hassle and a crazy chore, just even getting here on a Sunday. Or being sick or whatever else is going on, and you've got things from work coming on for the week. Maybe you have things even through the day. Maybe it's your only day off on Sunday. And so we get here, this building, come in here to worship God, and we kind of look up on this, Daniel's singing, we look up on the slides, and we're seeing some of the words, and we're kind of like, okay, I see what's going on here, but it kind of takes a minute to kind of realize, or maybe for us to just warm up to sing. Maybe we're just tired. And then maybe by the time the preaching time hits, sermon, we start preaching, start sharing the message, and maybe by that point, we're just finally getting to the point, okay, I'm kind of awake now. I can kind of get to the point where I'm understanding what's going on. And then before we realize that we're already thinking about lunch, and your stomach starts growling halfway through, is Bobby going to go 40 minutes today or 30 minutes today? He's already at 35. This looks like he might not be done yet. So this might be a long time. I mean, these kind of thoughts and go through our minds as we're kind of sitting. But if we just take a step back, just for a minute, and it's just to ask the question, why are we here? Why do we gather together with other believers? Why do we get in a room together and sing these songs to God? Why do we pray? Why do we have time to preaching from the Word, just in thinking through why we do those things? They're not by accident. The intention, the design, when we sing songs, we're not listening to, right, the Daniel Savage praise band and just hearing them. That's not the goal. We've tried really hard even to make sure that that's not the focus of just having entertainment for us to hear on Sunday mornings. And a lot of times people go to church and they go, that's a great band. Daniel and Jana have some of the most awesome voices I've ever heard and do one of the best jobs of anybody out there. But they would tell you their job is not to entertain us. We are the audience, or God's the audience, and we are the ones singing. We're part of it. Corporate worship is us singing along. And as Daniel's leading, the goal is that we would sing our praises not to them, but to the Lord. That we are singing these songs about God, to God, for His name, for His purposes. That's the point. That's the direction. That's the guidance that we're going after. As we sing these songs, we're understanding more of a depth of God, of His theology, of who He's about, of what He is, how we can worship Him better, how we can understand, how we can be thankful to who God is. And in that, it changes our heart. We're talking in community group this past week and just thinking through this idea of thankfulness and what does it mean to be thankful? And I think, I know Nick talked last Sunday about this idea of sacrifice and service and this heart of sacrifice and giving. And in that of giving back, when we give up, when we understand that it's not about us, all of a sudden it changes our whole tone and our whole nature of our heart. When you can give up of yourself, right? We realize we don't all sing like Daniel and Jan on Sunday mornings. That's okay. When we sing to the Lord, what does it say? God loves a joyful heart, a cheerful heart. It's about our hearts, about us singing out to the Lord as if no one else is around. Now, people realize people are around, but the point is we're not looking at them for our affirmation and how bad we sing. You ever sing in the shower or in the car when no one's around? And sometimes like you'll drive by somebody and you can see they are rocking out like in the car. And I have no idea what they're singing, but they're having a blast, right? You know that they're having an awesome time in the car. Like that should be Sunday morning, right? That should be when we sing to the Lord and we're singing to God corporately. That should be where our hearts are engaged in. If you're doing it because you want someone to look at you, you've got the wrong heart. But if you're doing it because you're singing this to the Lord and thankful for what He is and what He's done, your hearts are in the right place of what we're trying to do. We want to engage in that of a heart of thankfulness, and we do that corporately because there's something about us doing that together that says we are thankful to God together for what God has done. We can do it individually, and honestly, for me, it's much easier for me to sing louder by myself because no one else has to hear it. But there is something about us doing that together that is a really neat thing. As a body, singing together in thankfulness to God together for what He's done as a church. I think also in that, a lot of times we come Sunday morning and there's a time for everything, right? We realize that hopefully as we come in front of the presence of God's Scripture, we're convicted. We're convicted of our sin. We're convicted of our own things that we bring in. Realize also that not every week is an amazing week. Right? You may be just really struggling, and you come in and your heart is broken. That's going to happen, and it would be unhuman for us to say that to minimize that or trivialize that. And please don't hear me say that this morning. All of us deal with that. We go through periods of time in our life when it's just, we come in broken. And we come in and we want to it's hard for us to engage in thankfulness at the moment because we can't see past the situation, the circumstance. I realize that there's a time for that. And there's time to do that. But it's also wrong for us just to stay there. Because if you stay in despair, and if we're staying in a woe is me life, what are we saying then about who God is and what He's given us? Is that this situation that I'm dealing with, my troubles, my problems, my struggles, are bigger than God. And God has not given me enough to help me overcome this. The focus is not on what God has done or what God is doing, but the focus is on us. So while we can't help but have those weeks and those times, and some of us, maybe has happened a lot in your life. I mean, every one of our stories is different. And so again, don't hear me say I want to trivialize that, but we can't stay there. A Christian who has been saved by the grace of God, who is not going to spend an eternity in hell, but is spend an eternity with Christ in heaven, has much to be thankful about, has much to sing praises to God about, because we have been forgiven much. We have been given much. We have much to be thankful for. And lastly, celebrating through corporate faithfulness. Let's look in verse 44. On that day, men were appointed over the storerooms, the contributions, the first fruits, and the tithes, to gather into them the portions required by the law for the priests and for the Levites according to the fields of the towns. For Judah rejoiced over the priests and the Levites who ministered. And they performed the service of their God in the service of purification, as did the singers and the gatekeepers according to the command of David and the son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there were directors of the singers, and there were songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. And all Israel in the days of Zerubbabel and in the days of Nehemiah gave the daily portions for the singers and the gatekeepers, and they set apart that which was for the Levites. And the Levites set apart that which was for the sons of Aaron. So what you have here in this little kind of short little section goes back to the fact that Israel was committed to keeping the law of God. The law was very big, a big part of the covenant that Israel was to keep with God. And God gave them, at this point, they had the first 5 books of the Old Testament, Genesis through Deuteronomy. And this was the books that told them how they were to live and how they were to function and what they were to do. And part of that was in giving their first fruits in the storerooms and taking care of what was necessary for the work in Jerusalem. Also in that, there was all these things that they were supposed to keep as far as being generous with other people and the way that they lived and the way that they operated. And so here you've got a kind of a show to them that they finally are taking this seriously. And we realize even just throughout history, this time in Israel's life, from the time about Nehemiah to the time of Jesus, you've got in Israel probably one of the times they closely kept the law, so much so where they kind of started to go in the wrong direction that way, where they saw in that, when the time of Jesus comes around, the time of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they kept the law so well that they saw their own righteousness by the law, which also is a problem. Another huge problem, that we can't be righteous because of the law, we're righteous because of Jesus. But we love his law because God loves it. So in that, we see they finally are doing this and doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're keeping the law as best they can, and they're being faithful for one of the first times in their lives, especially as a nation and as a group of people. And I think lastly, we understand this idea of especially celebrating corporately. Faithfulness is a big part of that. What we hope is left for us as followers of Jesus Christ is not a one-time thing, but a life of faithfulness. A life of faithfulness. Life throws all kinds of curveballs here and there, left and right. You've got ups and you've got downs. You've got mountains and you've got valleys. You've got all kinds of things in the way. And it's very easy to worship God on those mountaintop experiences. When everything's going well, you're feeling great. You're feeling like worshiping the Lord. You come in again on a Sunday and you're just on cloud 9. And you're like, I just want to sing. I'm excited about singing. I love doing this. I love hearing. I want to be here. But there are other days when just to be honest, we don't want to be here. We really don't want to be here. And there are other times in your life where it's hard to get up to go to work. It's hard to do these things in our lives. And we have to just kind of dig in and go, God, I pray that you would just give me the energy and rest. And I just want to know that you're breaking through here, this aspect of my life, but I just don't feel like doing this. Faithfulness is kind of the commitment to keep on going throughout that. In marriage, there are days when you really love your spouse, and it makes it easy to love the other person. There are other days when it's not easy. But because of the commitments in which we make, we continue to fight on. Not because we feel like it, but because we made a commitment to the Lord. And in that, we hope that season is short-lived by loving our spouse in spite of ourselves. But it's selflessness, not selfishness. We can't do things based on just our immediate feeling in the moment. Because if we do that, we'll make terrible decisions. If you've ever been on a diet and you go, man, I really feel like eating cake, your feelings are going to lead you away from that diet every time. Our feelings move us in the directions that make us most comfortable, we think. But they're hardly ever the best things for us. When we talk about faithfulness to the Lord, We're talking about a life of faithfulness, of living after Him, following after Him. That doesn't mean we don't fall. That doesn't mean we have things along the way that take us down. But we don't give up on that, and we do this together. It's this idea that we as a body are here for each other. God has put His church on the planet, and one of the things He's done in doing that, and by His church, I mean more than just redemption. I'm talking about all the believers and the entire planet, that God brought us together for us to do this thing together with. And that the local expression here in Ogden, Utah, is the people around you that God has placed. Pray for each other, to love one another, to take care of one another, help encourage one another to stay on that path of faithfulness together as a body. We need to make sure that faithfulness is one of the marks of our church. Faithfulness. Not giving up when things get hard, not quitting, but continuing. I think I've shared this analogy before, so forgive me if you've heard this before. I used to play like ESPN college football, and they don't make it anymore, NCAA football, because of some kind of like legal issues or whatever from lawsuits with the players. But I love playing it because it's just fun playing your team and winning, and you want to see your team win throughout. So what I learned is if you're losing a game while you're playing, if you hit reset, it doesn't save it. So you can restart and try it again. Because you just hate to lose. I hate losing. I didn't want to lose. I want to get like an undefeated season because it's not real life or anything else. And a lot of times we treat our lives like that. Or it's much easier to quit something that's difficult instead of continue when it's hard. Continue when it's hard. Be faithful to the Lord who's been faithful to us. We know that He'll never leave us or forsake us. Through Jesus Christ, because of His work on the cross, thankfully, He doesn't hold our failures against us. However, because of that, let's be faithful to Him. Let's be faithful to the Lord and do that as a church. In this, I hope that we understand what a life of thankfulness looks like, especially corporately as a body, celebrating the goodness of God, celebrating the greatness of God, celebrating the sacrifice He's given us on the cross, doing that through committing to Him, but also being faithful to Him. And all those things are part of what it means to look like to have a church that's faithful and thankful to what God has done. Let's pray.